It's about time. God bless you today as we study Genesis chapters 32 through 34. We pick up where um, Jacob and his family, his peoples, has left his uncle Laban's house, and he's headed to um, meet up with Esau. It's time. It's time to reconcile the relationship because the Lord said to go. And here we are where the place where he is at is called Menahem, which means two camps. And angels have come to Jacob and a reminder to Jacob that God has not left him alone. He really is going before him. He really has ordered his steps in this way. And verse 3, then Jacob sent messengers ahead of himself to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. Now remember, this is the same brother that Jacob tricked out of his birthright right twice. Esau was waiting for Isaac to die to kill Jacob. So this has been a pretty intense separation. Over 20 years has went by since either one has been seen. And Jacob wants to reconcile with his brother. And so he has a couple of people, his messengers, his servants, go before him. Verses 4 through 5. He commanded them, saying, this is what you shall say to my lord Esau, the humility. Your servant Jacob says the following: I have resided with Laban and stayed until now, and I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. And I have sent messengers to tell my lord Esau, so that I may find favor in your sight. The messengers will come to Esau and speak about Jacob, and more importantly, the humility of Jacob, and especially the way that Esau is being addressed, Lord, and Jacob, thy humble servant. Now, he also wants Esau to know that he does not need anything from him. And verses 6 through 8, the messengers return to Jacob that Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men. Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks, the herds, the camels, into two companies. For he said, if Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the company which is left will escape. Will escape. Now we got to think about 400 men. Why is Esau coming with 400 men? So when we hear this word, it does not sound warm and fuzzy, but we're going to keep on getting into it. And, thoughts, just thoughts. Has enough time went by for forgiveness? Does Esau need more time to forgive? And a question in Matthew 23:24, can we admit when we have done others wrong? Because that scripture tells us that if we know we have done wrong against our brother, to go to them and reconcile. And Esau and Jacob were not just brothers, they were twins. And um, if you have twins in your life, I have some twin nephews. There is a bond, there is a protectiveness that's there. So when you think about 20 years of not having that relationship, now is a good time. And verses 9 through 10, then Jacob said, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the favor and of all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant. For with my only staff I have crossed the Jordan, and now I have become two companies. And Jacob acknowledged that he doesn't deserve God's promises. But we know when God speaks a word, it comes to pass. And he also wants to know that he wants Esau to know that God has allowed him to prosper with Laban. And question for us, do we recognize that our prosperity is not due to anything that we've done, but it's God's pleasure? Now, at this moment, though, Jacob needs God's help in this situation. And this is why he puts a demand on God where he says the God of Abraham and Isaac. And I love that. And that's so important for us today, is putting a demand on God, is reminding God, you told me to look for another job. You told me to go on this interview. The word does the work. But after praying, Jacob gathers a gift for Esau, 530 flocks. 530 flocks. Whoa. Hopefully Esau would see that he did not need anything from him, but wanted a relationship with him. Our thoughts. Jacob sent the first and second set of messengers who would let Esau know the gift was from him and that he is behind them. This is a plan. Jacob sent his 2 wives, 2 maidens, and their 11 sons across the Jabbok River, but he stayed at the camp. Verses 25 through 26. And a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. When the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. Then the man said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." For the dawn is breaking. But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." My God. Wow. Here is a man who came to wrestle Jacob. And we're going to say an angel. We're going to say yes. Because Jacob was strong, but no one stronger than God. But Jacob was not going to he was not going to back down. And after what he experienced with Laban, he didn't back down. He did not back down. He had persistence. And think about this persistence, as he was the one, the younger brother who grabbed Esau's foot in his mother's womb. So this is a wrestling that this is a battle. It's been war. And so here the angel tells Jacob that he will now be called Israel. He has wrestled with God and man, and he is still standing. And Israel means God's rules. And we're going to hear the back and forth between Israel and Jacob, and we're going to recognize that. And Jacob has also learned that God is all powerful. Verse 30, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. We can think about Job and how God ended up speaking to him because Job wanted to plead his case, and he was able to see that same power that Jacob is seeing now, but and in being an overcomer of wrestling of being in a wrestle with God. Oh my goodness. And we should be thankful. This is something that, especially now with things happening, that anytime we have an encounter with God's glory, we should be grateful. Anytime we have an encounter. So at this particular place, he left it named Peniel. And also because of his limp, of what happened with his hip torn out of socket, there's today with the Israelites a food restriction that they do not eat the thigh muscle where Jacob's thigh socket was taken out. And we have in chapter 33, Jacob faces his brother. We find ourselves with Jacob, who sees Esau and the 400 men coming, just like the messengers had said that Esau was on his way to meet him. Um, so Jacob separates Rachel, Leah, and the two servant mothers of his other children. The servant mothers were in front with the children, then Leah and the children, then Jacob and Rachel. And yes, Jacob comes to the front and bows before Esau 7 times. Jacob shows his humility with Esau. And then something happens where Esau runs to Jacob, hugging and kissing him, and they both cry. And then we have verse 5. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." And I have to also mention um, Joseph being with Rachel. Now, Esau did not know what to expect visualizing this, since he had also been blessed as well. Isaac's blessing for him was one of hard work, but eventually he said Isaac had the part of the blessing was that he would break out from under the yoke of Jacob. And this is where we are, where Esau, 400 men, we'll find out about that further on. Now, Jacob's children's mother introduced himself, bowing as well. Verse 8, Esau says, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" With the flocks, 530 flocks. Jacob answered, "To find favor with my Lord." Jacob had feared his life. You can only imagine. Jacob's trickery didn't get him far. He wanted to be all good, and we can understand. We should want that between our brothers and sisters as well. Verse 9, Esau replies, "He has enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Verses 10 through 11, Jacob says, "No, please. If I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand. For truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God." Wow. Esau is confirmed he's good. He's gravy. He does not need anything from his brother. But um, understanding this time and place of where if so this time and place is that if I'm going to be your enemy, I'm not going to accept your gifts, and then you will know that I have not forgiven you. So this is why Jacob is persistent. So not even more saying that seeing Esau is like truly seeing the face of God, because even though God had told him to go, we saw the angels in the beginning that God was going to be with him. Having a face to face with someone you know you've done wrong, well, not just someone, his twin, his brother, more than just his brother, but knowing what you've done to them, you tricked them out of his birthright, not just once but twice. And Jacob, knowing that Esau's plan was to kill him, it's important for Esau to accept this gift. Although 530 flocks is a lot, but it's important for Esau to accept. And so Jacob even continues in pursuing him to accept. Verse 11, "Please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me." I mean, Jacob is saying some good stuff. "And I have everything I want." Jacob is urging. He's urging again. He's urging Esau to take this gift. And so with Jacob telling Esau that seeing his face is like seeing the face of God, God has answered his prayer by delivering him from Esau, killing him. Let's not forget that. Esau did not get the spiritual blessing as Jacob, but what he received he's in a good place. He's in a good place. There's no more, there's the jealousy or animosity or the thought that, uh, of course, we go back, you can go back to our previous videos where it talks about how Esau felt and how he wept, realizing that his father had gave away his blessing. But he wants Jacob to know it's all good. And here Esau is ready to travel with Jacob. And Jacob also, he's at a place where he is sensitive to his young children and flock. And some of them are nursing the animals and cannot travel on a fast pace. And even some of the children, I'm, you know, thinking about their ages. And then he says, Jacob says to Esau, "Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So the plan is that Esau will continue, will go back, because that's where he came from. Esau came from. And then Jacob will eventually meet Esau in Seir. Now Esau tells Jacob, verse 15, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." Jacob says, "Why should my Lord be so kind to me?" Esau was showing kindness and wanting to help escort the nursing cattle and his family. Jacob had to be exhausted at this point mentally. Um, if you can just imagine, 20 years, siblings finally coming together because the Lord said go. But the mental anguish that could cause, and that's just my thought because I've been there. It hasn't been 20 years, but I could think of a whole month of not talking to my sibling is a lot. And definitely can't put myself in the same place of Jacob and Esau, but just thinking about that. And then even thinking, um, was Jacob convinced that Esau still wouldn't try to hurt him or his family, because we know how he felt in the beginning, just where he was, he had fear. But here we are. um, he had prayed for the Lord to help. The Lord sent help. Restoration came. God had worked it out. Verses 16 through 17. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir, but Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built himself a house and made booths for his cattle. Now Jacob has just given his brother 530 pieces of herd. That's a lot. And we don't know the numbers of how many herd that Jacob had left, but Jacob needed to be replenished. He needed to, um, be in a place where he could get more, herd, more cattle. Unfortunately, Jacob is not truthful because he was not going to meet Esau in Seir. Now in Succoth, Jacob built a home, and then he ends up going to Shechem, and that's in Canaan, and that's where he buys land from Haram, which we'll hear about, and he puts up a tent. He builds an altar there and calls it El Elohi Israel. And a thought for us: be careful where we settle if this is not where the Lord has said what the Lord has said for us. In this particular place, the Lord had promised him, his ancestors, Canaan. So we want to make sure we go where the Lord has promised us to go. Amen. And we're here with Jacob. And then, I'm sorry, chapter 34, this is where we are now. And we are here with Jacob, who is in the promised land, Canaan. Verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah and Jacob, whom she had borne to Jacob, which, yes, went out to visit the daughters of the region. Now Dinah was the only daughter Jacob had among her 11 brothers. I can imagine if you are the only girl in your family, probably um, brothers are protective, and if you have just 3 siblings and you are a daughter, you could be protected as well. Now she's visiting other daughters in the city, um, being young as we all are, or as we all were. I still call myself a young girl. Um, and these are young ladies, these are her peers. So, verse 2, when Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, prince of the region, saw her, he seized her and lay with her by force. So, Shechem raped her, defiled her. Verse 3, and his soul was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So not only does he feel connection to Dinah, which talked about how his soul was drawn to her, but he loves her and he speaks sweet to her. Verse 4, Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, get me this girl to be my wife. Hamor is the one we talked about the last chapter. He is the one who sold Jacob the land, and he does have a relationship with Jacob as within Jake as also with Jacob's family. Now, verse 5, Jacob heard what Shechem had done to his daughter, defile his daughter, but his sons were not there because they were with his cattle in the fields. So Jacob kept his peace until they came. And just a thought, the father has it's like the father has given um um has allowed the sons to take care of the situation. So not that Jacob didn't have any feelings or he wasn't angry, but he did allow his sons to have that authority. And so Jacob did keep his peace. And then thinking about the situation of where he was, it's a lot of dynamics here. That just thinking about that. Verse 6, and Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him, just as the sons came in from the field. And the sons are now hearing about what happened to their sister. Now, when they heard it, they were indignant and very angry because Shechem had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. And isn't that interesting? Even though it's just the one family, Jacob's family there, they said he has committed an outrage in Israel. Think about that. Think about that. Um, it's recognizing who they are, who Jacob is, the covenant that God's given, the promise. How dare Shechem defiles Dinah? Again, the brothers are angry. The sons say, "For such a thing ought not to be done." Israel's God's chosen people. Again, even though there's only Jacob and his family there, they are still God's chosen people. Verse 8. So it's interesting that Hamor has heard what the brothers have said, but verse 8 starts in but. Hamor spoke with them, saying, the heart of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. So this definitely, we can get the feeling that Hamor is a people pleaser, especially when it comes to his son. It's like, I want the doll, daddy. Chocolate factory. Whatever his son says, It's like a life of, oh gosh, the word is on the tip of my tongue, of getting what you want, of, um, I think about some of the generation now. It's like, you owe me this. I didn't work for it, but you owe me. Yes. So the nerve, right? Verse 9, make marriage with us. Hmm? Give your daughters for yourself. So we give you, you give us Dinah, your daughters, and you take our daughters. That's what this is saying. So not only will Shechem be satisfied, the sons can be satisfied. I mean, like this is a win-win kind of situation. No. Verse 10, you shall live with us. Hamar is continuing. You shall live with us, and the land shall be open to you, the land that God promised them. They can't give them what God has promised them. Live and trade in it and get property in it. Dinah has been defiled, and now Shechem's father is asking Job for permission for his son to marry Dinah. What kind of offer is this? And the nerve, the audacity. Oh my goodness. Verse 11, Shechem says, let me find favor with you, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Shechem wants favor with Jacob and his sons for Dinah. Favor. Jacob had had favor, but the shoe was on a different foot, especially when it comes to his daughter and her being violated. Verse 12, put them, Shechem, this is him talking, put the marriage present and gift as high as you like, and I will give you whatever you ask me. Hmm. Only give me the young woman to be my wife. Wow. The price he is willing to pay for Dinah. Let's think about that, the price. Because when just studying this, it made me think of what Jesus paid for us, and it gives a greater understanding as to his requirements for our life, and the requirements, the expectation that Shechem and his father had for violation. Wow. Verse 13, Jacob's son answered, let me start this. Jacob's son, Jacob's sons answered, I'm sorry, Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. Verse 14, they said to him, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who was uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Jacob's sons spoke in deceitfulness. They spoke in that, we're gonna tell you what you want to hear. We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you. That's when it says they spoke to them deceitfully. This is what they say. And they're, because of course they're still angry. They told Hamor and Shechem that Dinah could not be married off to someone who was not circumcised. We know that Jacob's family, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, families are in the covenant of circumcision. So we know something is going on for the brothers to mention this to this crew. Verse 15, only on this condition will we consent to you, that you will become as we are, and every male among you be circumcised. Listen, Linda. So the sons just, and where's Jacob's voice in this whole trying to create a covenant that God is not in with some strangers, Canaanites. Um, wow, let's think about that. How far are you willing to go? But the brothers were angry. The condition, the consent, that you will become as we are, circumcision, and every male among you be circumcised. What? Let's get more into this. Verse 16. Then will we give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves. I'm sorry, we will take our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves. And we will live among you and become one people. Again, the brothers are using, and makes me think about Esther and Ruth, who's like, I'll be your people, you be my people. But that's a totally different situation. This right here is all deceitfulness. The brothers are again using the covenant that the Lord gave them regarding circumcision for evil. Jacob is not, we don't hear Jacob say anything. Verse 17, but if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone. Verse 18, and well, they're making it plain in verse 17. That is the consent. That is the agreement that has to be made if they don't want to be the men um, and Shechem do not want to be circumcised. They can bounce. This is it's no lost love, but they will not have Dinah and any other daughter that's there. Verse 18, their words pleased Hamor and Habor's son Shechem. Verse 19, and not even realizing Hamor and Shechem had no discernment, but they did, we'll submit this, they did, because, when you're talking about the God of my father, Abraham and Isaac, you expect there to be a truthfulness in what you say, right? Verse 19, and the young man did not delay to do the thing, the circumcision, for himself first, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Wow. Wow. Now he was the most honored of all his family. And studying that in the word, sometimes people ignore, yes, and they also don't speak out against what's wrong. They don't speak out against rape. They don't speak out against human trafficking because either they're getting paid or it's like in Shechem's situation, it pleases his flesh. And thinking about the father who seems like a good businessman, but not holding Shechem up to a standard because there's no standard. But they did believe what Simeon and Levi, Jacob's sons, had said to them. Now, this was not an offer that Shechem was going to pass up. And notice it says he did not delay in getting circumcised. Shechem was honored among his family, but he didn't honor Dinah. Verse 20, so Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of the city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, verse 21, these people, oh Lord, these people are friendly with us. Let them live in their land and trade in it. For the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters in marriage, and let us give them our daughters. Wow, the arranged marriages. The and that definitely would have been the intermingling, um, as far as marrying other daughters. But the people believed in what Jacob's son had said to them if they were circumcised. So this is This is huge, where Hamor and his son going to the city to talk to the whole city of men. Wow. They were not planning their agreement. Verse 22, only on this condition will they agree to live among us. Again, Hamor and his son is talking to the men and letting them know what has to be agreed upon. They agreed to live among us, to become one people, but every male among us has to be circumcised. Now, that's a lot to ask, because if you know anyone that has been circumcised, my dad was circumcised older, and it wasn't great. You know, that's not um, it's not a walk in the park. It's painful. And just thinking about all the men in the city that agreed to this, verse 23, will not their livestock, their property, and all their animals be ours? Mm, interesting thought. Only let us agree with them, and they will live among us. So, not just even more in pleasing Shechem, Hamor he brings out the land, the sharing of livestock. But the question mark in verse 23, and all the animals will be ours, even it's something in that word that could be deceitful. Okay, but we're gonna agree, because as long as Shechem is happy, we need him to be happy because he is the prince. Okay, verse 24. So they had additional reassurance. They gave the men additional reassurance with that. And because we're all going to be together after all. Verse 24, and all who went out of the city gate heeded Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. So all the men were circumcised. That's a lot of pain. But the gain, that's really interesting, where we can think about even just not as strong as circumcision, but what we go through as people, what we've been through to overcome that, to be in a place where we have the victory. They believe they had the victory, intermingling with the land, and you get my daughter, I get your daughter, okay. They wouldn't have a reason to doubt. On the third day, after the men were circumcised, in pain and defenseless, Simeon and Levi, two of Dinah's brothers, killed all the men, including Hamor and Shechem. The brothers removed Dinah from Shechem's house, looted the city, and took the men's flocks, riches, and made their wives and children slaves. Wow. We understand vengeance, but they went far. Um, wow, the mindset, the deception, the lying. Now Jacob is furious with Simeon and Levi and tells them, verse 30, you have brought trouble on me by making me odious to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household. Simeon and Levi are under the same. Did they think about Simeon and Levi, how they're under that same household that Jacob is talking about? Remember, Jacob is given Esau 530 pieces of flock. So he doesn't have a big army of flock left. He doesn't have a big a servanthood left It's not. And if any of the Canaanites, Perizzites, even combine their resources, they will be destroyed. Now, Jacob is looked at as offensive by other people because these are his sons, and um, they know Jacob's family, right? Abraham, Isaac, been through there, and the covenant that God has made, and even more to think about. Wow, they're just like us since they didn't keep their word. And here we end the chapter with Simeon and Levi responding to Jacob because they're like, whatever, man. Should our sister be treated like a prostitute? We hear you, Father, but that's how the brothers ended. They still are angry. And if we have siblings, we can understand why. And unless we be careful as well. And we also know that God is the one that avenges us, He's the one that provides a vengeance. And we want to think about that. So, God bless you as we're on our journey of it's about time. It's about time for the word. It's about time for us to take time in the things of God. Take care.